Hey man, when a woman starts losing interest, she rarely tells you directly. She doesn't sit you down and confess that her emotions are fading, that her attraction is slipping, or that the connection she once swore was unbreakable no longer feels alive inside of her. Instead, she plays games. Silent, subtle, manipulative games that are designed not just to test you, but to protect her own ego as she drifts away. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When a woman begins pulling back, she wants to do it in a way that leaves her without guilt and places the blame squarely on you. So, she crafts scenarios, she changes her patterns, she distorts the reality you're both living in until you begin to question yourself. These games aren't random, they're calculated moves born from her instincts to withdraw while keeping her image intact. And if you're not aware, you'll walk right into the trap of taking responsibility for her fading feelings. One of the most dangerous games she plays when losing interest is the sudden creation of distance under the disguise of being busy. In the beginning, she would always answer quickly, find ways to carve out time, or even rearrange her schedule just to see you. But now, every text gets delayed, every call goes unanswered, and every plan becomes maybe. She starts sprinkling her excuses with phrases like, "I've just got a lot going on," or "You're overthinking, I'm just tired." But beneath that, what's really happening is emotional detachment. She wants you to feel like the one who is being needy, while in reality, she is the one stepping back. This is a dangerous game because it makes you question your worth, when in truth, nothing about you has changed. What changed is the story she's telling herself in her head, and she needs distance to justify rewriting the script of your relationship. Another game women play when they're losing interest is the weaponization of comparison. You'll notice it in small, seemingly harmless comments. She'll mention how a coworker remembered something about her that you forgot, or how a stranger at a cafe complimented her in a way you never do anymore. At first, these comments seem like innocent observations, but they are far from innocent. What she's doing is planting seeds of inadequacy inside your mind. She wants you to believe you're falling short, not because you actually are, but because she needs justification for her fading attraction. The comparison game is designed to make you overcompensate, to chase harder, to prove your worth. And in doing so, you unknowingly step into the role of the desperate man she can no longer respect. The truth is, when a woman compares you to others, it's less about them and more about her creating a bridge to step out of your world. Then comes the most dangerous game of all, emotional withdrawal, while maintaining physical presence. She still shows up, she still smiles, she still holds your hand in public, but behind the mask, her heart has already begun to drift. This game is dangerous because it convinces you everything is still fine, while slowly starving you of real intimacy. Her kisses feel lighter, her touch is less intentional, her laughter slightly delayed. It's death by 1,000 cuts, and it makes you doubt your instincts because, on the surface, nothing seems wrong. She's still there physically, but emotionally, she's already packing her bags. This duality is meant to keep you in limbo, so when she eventually leaves, she can point to all the moments she was still there and make you believe it was your paranoia that ruined things. In reality, she had already checked out long before the final goodbye. And finally, when a woman is losing interest, she plays the game of provocation, subtly creating arguments, pushing your buttons, and setting traps that force you to react emotionally. She'll make snide remarks, bring up past mistakes, or suddenly become hypercritical of things that never mattered before. The goal isn't resolution, it's escalation. She wants you to lose your frame, to snap, to show insecurity or anger, because once you do, she can justify her decision to leave. This is the cruelest game because it feeds on your love. You argue not because you don't care, but because you care too much, and she knows that. But every outburst, every defensive explanation, every desperate attempt to fix things only accelerates her loss of respect. She's not testing to see if you'll fight for her. She's testing to see if you'll self-destruct, so she doesn't have to be the villain when she walks away. What most men don't realize is that when a woman starts these games, she is no longer in the relationship for love. She's in it for control, for narrative, and for self-preservation. By pulling away slowly, she gets to avoid looking like the one who gave up. By provoking you into arguments, she makes it appear as though you ruined what you had. By comparing you to others, she positions herself as the victim of a man who didn't measure up. All of these maneuvers are carefully designed so that when she does finally leave, she gets to rewrite the history of the relationship in her favor. To the outside world, she can say, "I tried, but he just wasn't the man I needed." Meanwhile, you're left blindsided, wondering how something that once felt so solid could unravel so easily. The truth is, it didn't unravel overnight. It was chipped away piece by piece through games you didn't even realize were being played. Another dangerous tactic women use when losing interest is the game of false vulnerability. She'll suddenly talk about how confused she is, how she doesn't know what she wants, or how she's trying to figure herself out. At first, this seems like honesty, and as a man who cares, you'll want to support her, reassure her, and help her find clarity. But underneath, this is not real vulnerability, it's a shield. By presenting herself as confused, she buys herself time to emotionally detach while keeping you from holding her accountable. After all, how can you be upset with someone who is just lost or unsure? But make no mistake, she knows exactly what she's doing. She's softening the blow for herself, not for you. And the danger here is that you'll pour more of yourself into someone who is already mentally left, draining your energy into a void that was never going to give back. When women are losing interest, they also start to play the game of selective affection. One day she's warm, attentive, and even intimate. The next, she's cold, distant, and indifferent. This push-pull dynamic is not accidental. It keeps you off balance, questioning yourself, and trying harder to get back the version of her you experienced yesterday. She gives you just enough affection to keep you hooked, but withholds it enough to make you chase. And in doing so, she gains power. The selective affection game is the ultimate manipulation because it preys on your natural desire to restore harmony, to fix what feels broken, to win her back. But what you don't see is that the affection she doles out is not genuine anymore. It's transactional. She's giving you crumbs while saving the feast for somewhere else, or worse, for the fantasy of a man she hasn't even met yet. Then comes the game of diversion, shifting focus away from her behavior and onto yours. If you confront her about her distance, she'll say you're being insecure. If you bring up her lack of effort, she'll accuse you of being controlling. If you point out her inconsistencies, she'll frame you as paranoid. This game is particularly insidious because it makes you question your own perception of reality. It plants seeds of self-doubt that grow into full-blown confusion. You start to wonder if maybe you really are asking for too much. Maybe you really are imagining things. Maybe you're the one ruining the relationship. And that's exactly the point. If she can convince you that you're the problem, then she never has to face her own lack of investment. This game is not about truth. It's about creating just enough fog to allow her to slip away unnoticed. The final game she plays when she's losing interest is the silent audition for her next chapter. Pay close attention, because when a woman's eyes start looking outward instead of inward, the signs are there. She starts dressing differently, not for you, but for how others might perceive her. She becomes more active on social media, posting pictures or stories designed to get validation from strangers. She surrounds herself with new people, new activities, new environments, all of which you are curiously excluded from. And the most dangerous part? She does all of this while still being with you, so you're left believing you're paranoid for noticing. But you're not paranoid, you're witnessing the rehearsal for a life that no longer includes you. This game is the most painful because it makes you invisible while still forcing you to play your role. You're there in body, but she's already gone in spirit. And by the time you realize what's happened, she's already stepped into her new story, leaving you wondering how you didn't see it sooner. One of the most overlooked games she plays when losing interest is the false future promise. She'll casually mention trips you'll never take, plans you'll never make, or a someday that she knows deep down will never arrive. This is not because she truly sees that future with you anymore. It's because dangling the illusion of tomorrow keeps you invested today. You stay patient, waiting for the right moment to arrive, not realizing she's already mentally deleted that chapter. This tactic is meant to soften her own guilt while keeping you tied to the hope that maybe she still wants the same things you do. But hope becomes a prison when it's built on words without action. By the time you realize the promises were empty, she has already shifted her energy elsewhere, leaving you confused about how you were planning a future with someone who was already living in the past. Another dangerous move is the friendship mask. When her attraction fades, instead of being upfront, she begins treating you more like a companion than a lover. The texts become more platonic, the affection fades, intimacy dwindles, and suddenly your relationship feels like it's stuck in neutral. This is not kindness, it's strategy. By transitioning into a friendlier version of herself, she eases her way out of the emotional intensity that once bound you together. It's easier for her to detach when she convinces herself that she still cares about you, just not that way. The trap here is that many men accept this dynamic, believing it's temporary or that it's just a phase. But in reality, it's the slow-motion burial of a relationship. She is already grieving the passion while you are still holding onto it, and the more you accept the friendship mask, the easier it becomes for her to justify walking away completely. Then there is the validation shift. At the start, you were her main source of reassurance. Your compliments mattered, your attention fed her, your validation lifted her. But as her interest fades, she redirects that need elsewhere. Friends, co-workers, social media, or even potential new suitors. Suddenly, she doesn't seem to care whether you notice her new outfit, but she'll light up if a stranger does. She'll ignore your praise, but post a picture online fishing for likes. This shift is dangerous because it signals that her emotional investment is no longer tied to you. She's already testing the waters of external validation, creating micro-connections that prepare her for the day she no longer seeks yours at all. And the most painful part, she doesn't tell you directly because she still wants the safety net of your presence until she feels secure enough to walk away for good. Another manipulation she'll use is the constant testing of boundaries. When her interest is fading, she begins to push limits she once respected. Maybe she starts disrespecting your time, canceling plans at the last minute, or showing up late without apology. Maybe she tests your patience by being flirtatious with others in front of you, waiting to see how you'll react. Maybe she disregards your values, making jokes or comments that cut deeper than before. These boundary pushes aren't accidents. They are subtle ways of gauging how much control she still has over you. If you tolerate it, she loses more respect. If you react with desperation, she confirms you've lost your frame. Either way, she's collecting data to justify her detachment. The dangerous game here is that no matter how you respond, she positions herself as the one with the power, while you're left either enduring disrespect or proving yourself in ways that only make her attraction drop further. And perhaps the cruelest game of all is pretending nothing is wrong. She'll laugh with you, kiss you, maybe even sleep with you, but deep down, her emotional detachment is already complete. This performance is meant to keep the peace until she finds a cleaner exit. It allows her to leave without ever facing uncomfortable conversations, without ever being held accountable for her fading love. But this game cuts the deepest because it makes you doubt your own instincts. You sense something is off. You feel the distance, but her actions keep telling you the opposite. And that disconnect between what you feel and what you see creates emotional chaos inside of you. It's not just that she's leaving, it's that she makes you question your sanity on her way out. By the time she finally reveals the truth, you're not just heartbroken, you're disoriented, unsure of when the relationship actually ended because the signs were hidden under a carefully constructed mask of normalcy. When a woman is losing interest, she often plays the rewriting history game. She starts reframing the relationship in her mind, not as a story of love and connection, but as a series of disappointments. She'll suddenly claim that you were never really there for her, or you never really understood her, even though for months or years you gave everything you could. This rewriting isn't based on facts, it's based on her current emotional state. Her feelings today become the filter through which she judges the past, and in doing so, she erases the good times while amplifying the bad. The danger here is that she convinces herself that leaving is not only justified but necessary, because now she sees the entire relationship as flawed from the beginning. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing her version of events, doubting your own memory, and questioning whether what you built together ever even existed in the first place. Another subtle but deadly game is the triangulation tactic. When her interest fades, she may intentionally bring another man into the conversation, not necessarily through outright cheating, but through suggestion. She might talk about how someone at work is so funny, or how a friend really gets her, planting seeds of comparison designed to unsettle you. Sometimes it's not even a real person. It could be a celebrity, a fictional character, or simply the kind of man she says she wishes you could be. This triangulation is meant to chip away at your confidence while simultaneously elevating her perceived options. It's her way of signaling that she's already imagining life beyond you, without having to admit it directly. And the most damaging part, it puts you in a position where you feel compelled to compete for a woman who is already mentally stepping out of the relationship, making you look desperate while she gains more control. Then there is the emotional whiplash game, alternating between affection and indifference so quickly that you can't keep up. One day she's sweet, warm, and playful. The next, she's distant, cold, and uninterested. This inconsistency is not random. It's a way of keeping you on edge, hooked on the highs while enduring the lows. It works because the human mind naturally clings to rewards that are unpredictable, like gambling. You keep chasing the affectionate version of her, hoping it will come back, while tolerating longer and longer stretches of emotional coldness. She knows this dynamic gives her the upper hand, because as long as you're hooked on the memory of how good it can be, you'll ignore how bad it actually is. This roller coaster is one of the most dangerous games, because it creates an addiction to her validation, trapping you in a cycle where her fading interest feels like your fault rather than her choice. Another tactic is the overcorrection game. When she senses that you're picking up on her lack of interest, she'll suddenly swing back with bursts of affection, compliments, or even intimacy to convince you everything is fine. But this is not genuine reconnection, it's a cover-up. She wants to keep you calm, to prevent conflict, or to keep you in place until she has a better escape route. These moments of sudden affection confuse you because they feel real in the moment, and you want so badly to believe that she's still invested. But if you step back and look at the pattern, you'll see it's not consistent, it's reactive. She only gives when she feels you slipping away, not because she truly wants to rebuild. This game is dangerous because it manipulates your hope, making you believe you're repairing the relationship, when in reality she's just buying time. And perhaps one of the coldest games she plays is the exit rehearsal. Long before she leaves, she begins living as though she's already single. She invests more in her social life than in the relationship. She starts making decisions without consulting you. She withholds pieces of herself, keeps secrets, or hides details about where she's been. This isn't accidental, it's practice. She's testing what it feels like to detach, to live without you, to emotionally survive on her own before making the final break. By the time she actually leaves, she's already gone through this process internally, which is why she can walk away so casually while you're left shattered. What makes this game so brutal is that you don't even realize she's rehearsing. You think she's just busy, stressed, or needing space. But in reality, she's easing herself into a future that no longer includes you, leaving you completely unprepared for the abruptness of her final goodbye. The next game women often play when losing interest is what I call the constant criticism game. Suddenly, everything you do seems to irritate her. The way you talk, the way you dress, the way you handle situations, all of it becomes ammunition for little digs and passive-aggressive remarks. This wasn't there before, at least not to this extent, but now it's almost daily. What's really happening here is projection. She's no longer satisfied, but instead of admitting her disinterest, she shifts the blame onto you. By criticizing every detail of your existence, she convinces herself that she has a valid reason to detach. This game is dangerous because it slowly eats away at your self-esteem. Instead of recognizing that her fading interest is about her own emotional instability, you start thinking you're genuinely inadequate. It puts you in a position of overcompensation, where you work harder to fix things that aren't broken, all while she drifts further away. Another dangerous pattern is the selective silence game. When she was invested, she wanted to talk about everything: your day, your thoughts, her feelings, your plans. Now, silence becomes her weapon. She withholds communication, not because she has nothing to say, but because she knows silence will unsettle you. It's not that she's suddenly introverted, it's that silence becomes a strategy to create distance. She wants you to feel uneasy, to chase her attention, to fill the void she's deliberately creating. And when you do, when you break the silence by texting, calling, or over-explaining, she sits back with the satisfaction of knowing she still controls your emotional response. This is dangerous because it flips the natural dynamic of a relationship. Instead of communication being a bridge, it becomes a tool of manipulation, and you're left talking more while she listens less, giving her all the control over when and how connection happens. One of the most subtle but powerful games is what I call the comparison to her past. She'll start mentioning her ex, not always in obvious ways, but in small, cutting remarks like, "He used to do this for me," or "He always made me feel that way." At first, it might sound casual, but it's intentional. She's reframing her past as more valuable than her present, making you feel as though you're failing to live up to someone else's shadow. The irony is, if you looked closer, you'd realize she probably complained about that same ex while they were together. But memory is selective, and now that she's losing interest in you, she reimagines the past as better than it was to justify why the present no longer feels right. This is a dangerous game, because it puts you in a race you can never win. You're competing against an idealized version of someone who no longer exists, and that competition drains your spirit. Then there is the testing your patience game. When her interest fades, she may begin doing small things to deliberately push your buttons, not because she enjoys conflict, but because she wants to see how much you're willing to tolerate. She might cancel plans last minute, ignore your messages, or flirt with others just enough to get a reaction. These aren't accidents, they're calculated provocations. By observing your responses, she gauges whether you'll still cling to her despite the disrespect. If you lash out, she frames you as insecure. If you tolerate it, she loses more respect. Either way, she wins, because the game isn't about fairness, it's about power. This is dangerous because it erodes the foundation of respect in the relationship. The more you tolerate, the weaker you look. The more you react, the more desperate you appear. And all the while, she feels more justified in her decision to emotionally step away. Finally, one of the cruelest games of all is the strategic detachment game. This is when she begins to create an alternate life that runs parallel to yours. She invests in new hobbies, friendships, and routines that exclude you, yet she doesn't officially end the relationship. She does this to slowly detach while still reaping the benefits of your presence, your stability, your support, your resources. It's her way of building a safety net, ensuring that when she does leave, she won't feel the impact as hard. But for you, it's devastating. You're left confused as she grows more distant yet never fully lets go. You start to wonder if you're imagining things, if maybe you just need to be more understanding. But the truth is, this game is not about finding herself. It's about phasing you out without admitting it. And by the time you realize she's been rehearsing life without you, she's already emotionally gone, leaving you to pick up the pieces of something that was never broken by you in the first place. Another dangerous game women play when they're losing interest is what I call the "I'm changing" narrative. Suddenly, she positions herself as someone who is growing, evolving, or finding herself. On the surface, this sounds positive, and as a supportive partner, you may want to cheer her on, but often this narrative is not about genuine growth. It's about creating distance. By framing her fading interest as part of her personal journey, she absolves herself of responsibility for disconnecting from you. She'll say things like, "It's not you, I just need to focus on me," while conveniently ignoring the fact that her actions show she's focusing on everyone but you. The danger here is that you'll believe her story and blame yourself less, but you'll still waste time waiting for her to come back different, when in reality, she's already using the excuse of growth as a ticket to leave without guilt. Then comes the social escape game. When she's invested, you're at the center of her world, her go-to companion. But as her interest fades, you'll notice her prioritizing everyone else before you. Suddenly, her friends, colleagues, or even distant acquaintances take precedence over time spent with you. She'll say she needs a night out with the girls, or just wants to clear her head, but these outings become more frequent, and your place in her life becomes secondary. This isn't about socializing, it's about building a life that excludes you while still keeping you as a placeholder until she's ready to fully let go. This is dangerous because it normalizes her absence, conditioning you to accept less of her time and energy until you eventually realize she's no longer truly part of your life. Another manipulative game is the shifting standards tactic. Early in the relationship, she may have praised your ambition, your humor, your stability, or your leadership. But when her interest starts to fade, those same qualities suddenly become problems. Your ambition turns into you work too much. Your humor becomes you don't take things seriously. Your stability becomes you're boring. The very traits she once claimed to love are now twisted into reasons for her dissatisfaction. This is a dangerous psychological maneuver because it makes you feel like you've changed, when in reality, you've stayed the same. It forces you to chase after a moving target, constantly trying to reinvent yourself to win back approval that no longer exists. But the truth is, the problem isn't you. The problem is that her emotional lens has shifted, and instead of owning her loss of attraction, she rewrites the rules so you always fall short. Then there is the future doubt game. She starts asking questions like, are we really compatible long-term? Or, do you think this is really going somewhere? These questions aren't genuine explorations of the relationship. They're subtle signals of her fading commitment. By planting seeds of doubt, she prepares the ground for her eventual exit. This tactic allows her to slowly detach while making it seem like the relationship's instability is a mutual realization rather than her unilateral decision. The danger here is that you'll start overanalyzing everything, questioning your worth, and trying harder to prove that you are compatible. Meanwhile, she sits back, disengaging more and more, waiting until the day she can say, I knew this wouldn't work, as if she was simply being realistic all along. In truth, the game was never about doubt. It was about creating the illusion that she was justified in pulling away. Finally, one of the most destructive games is the sabotage loop. When she's losing interest, she may subconsciously or deliberately begin creating problems where none exist. She'll pick fights over small things, misinterpret your words, or stir up drama out of boredom. Why? Because if the relationship ends in conflict, she gets to walk away feeling justified. She'll say, it just wasn't working, or we fought too much, without ever admitting that she was the one engineering the fights in the first place. This game is dangerous because it traps you in a cycle of constant tension where you're always on edge, waiting for the next explosion. Over time, you begin to feel exhausted, drained, and defeated, not realizing that the chaos isn't a symptom of the relationship breaking down, it's the method she's using to kill it from the inside. The next game is the emotional outsourcing game. When her attraction fades, she doesn't stop needing emotional connection, she just stops seeking it from you. She'll turn to friends, co-workers, or even strangers online to vent, laugh, or share her feelings. You'll notice she becomes less open with you, yet you'll overhear her on long calls with others or see her constantly engaged in conversations that don't involve you. The danger here is not just that she's drifting away, but that she's redirecting the emotional intimacy that should belong to your relationship. By outsourcing her emotions, she creates a gap between you that grows wider by the day. You're left with scraps of her time and affection, while she gets her needs met elsewhere, all under the guise of just talking or just friends. But the reality is clear. When a woman replaces you emotionally, the physical exit is only a matter of time. Another game she'll play is the false blame game. When she's pulling away, she needs a story that makes her the victim, so she begins to frame you as the one who failed. Maybe she says you're too controlling, even though you gave her freedom. Maybe she says you're not attentive, even though you consistently showed up. Maybe she claims you changed, even though you've been steady all along. This isn't about truth, it's about her needing justification. By blaming you, she not only avoids guilt but also makes herself feel morally superior for leaving. And this is where many men fall into the trap of apologizing, overcorrecting, and begging for another chance, not realizing that the narrative was rigged from the start. This is dangerous because it keeps you trapped in self-blame while she walks away, believing she did nothing wrong. Then there's the withdrawal of intimacy game. Attraction is always revealed in how freely a woman gives her affection. When she's invested, she can't keep her hands off you. But as her interest fades, physical closeness becomes scarce. Hugs feel colder, kisses shorter, intimacy less frequent. She may even weaponize intimacy, withholding it as a way of controlling the dynamic. This is not always about someone else being in the picture, it's about her no longer feeling compelled to give. What makes this game so destructive is the slow erosion of connection it creates. You begin to feel undesirable, unwanted, even guilty for asking for affection that once flowed naturally. And as you try harder to reignite the spark, she pulls back further, creating a cycle where your effort increases while her interest decreases. It's one of the clearest signs she's slipping away, but also one of the hardest for men to confront because it cuts directly at the ego. Another subtle yet dangerous tactic is the indifference act. Instead of fighting, instead of arguing, she simply stops reacting. Your words no longer seem to matter. Your actions no longer provoke a response. You could plan something thoughtful and she'll shrug. You could express frustration and she'll go silent. This indifference is not peace, it's decay. A woman who still cares will argue, cry, or even complain because those reactions show investment. But when she's indifferent, it means she's already mentally disconnected. This game is dangerous because it leaves you feeling powerless. You can't fix indifference, you can't negotiate with silence, and you can't compete with apathy. By the time she reaches this stage, the relationship is hanging by a thread, and the hardest part is realizing that the absence of conflict doesn't mean things are good. It means things are already dead. Finally, there is the mirror game. When she's losing interest, she begins to reflect back the worst version of you, amplifying your flaws while ignoring your strengths. If you're ambitious, she'll call you selfish. If you're calm, she'll call you boring. If you're passionate, she'll call you controlling. She twists your identity, not because those traits are truly problems, but because she needs to reshape how she sees you to justify leaving. This is perhaps the most damaging of all the games, because it makes you doubt who you are at your core. You begin to second-guess your strengths, to dim your light, to mold yourself into whatever version you think will please her again. But the cruel truth is that no matter how much you adjust, she's already halfway out the door. The game isn't about you changing, it's about her creating reasons to walk away without guilt. Another game she plays when her attraction is fading is the over-socializing distraction. She suddenly becomes hyperactive in her social life, going out more often, filling her calendar with dinners, events, and trips, yet leaving little to no room for you. On the surface, it looks like she's just living her best life, but in reality, it's a strategy to keep herself emotionally distracted so she doesn't have to confront her declining feelings for you. It also conveniently gives her the excuse of being too busy to engage with you the way she once did. This is dangerous because it not only sidelines you, but also introduces environments where other men are present, new sources of validation, attention, and possibly temptation. By the time you question it, she frames you as controlling or insecure, while the truth is, she's deliberately using her social life as both a shield from accountability and a stepping stone away from the relationship. There's also the emotional debt game. She'll start keeping score, tallying every mistake you've ever made, every argument you ever lost, every time you fell short. Instead of remembering the love you gave, she clings to grievances like weapons. Why? Because when she's losing interest, she needs a story to tell herself about why leaving is justified. By keeping you in a constant state of guilt, she maintains the high ground. This is dangerous because you'll feel like you're forever trying to pay off a debt that never ends, constantly apologizing, constantly explaining, constantly trying to prove you've changed. But no matter what you do, she doesn't forgive, because forgiveness would mean staying invested, and she's already halfway gone. Another manipulation is the passive sabotage game. She starts withdrawing effort in ways that slowly corrode the relationship, all while pretending she's still invested. Maybe she stops initiating texts, stops putting energy into date nights, or becomes careless with the things that matter to you. When you notice and bring it up, she frames it as stress, fatigue, or being overwhelmed. But in reality, it's intentional disengagement. This game is dangerous because it slowly convinces you that you're carrying the entire relationship on your back. The more effort you put in, the less she gives, until you're drained, resentful, and exhausted. And then she leaves, claiming the relationship was no longer fulfilling, never admitting that she engineered its decline by withdrawing piece by piece. Another game she'll play is the appearance upgrade. Out of nowhere, she starts changing how she dresses, how she looks, how much attention she puts into her physical presentation. At first, you think it's for you, but then you realize the changes aren't directed at your approval. They're aimed outward. She invests in a new wardrobe, spends more time getting ready, maybe even hits the gym harder, but all of it seems tied to how she's perceived by others rather than you. This is not always about cheating, but it's often about repositioning herself in the dating market before officially leaving. This is dangerous because you'll sense the shift but struggle to call it out without sounding accusatory. And while you stay silent, she continues her quiet preparation, building confidence for a life beyond the relationship. The most manipulative game of all might be the victim exit strategy. When she's losing interest, instead of leaving with honesty, she begins constructing a narrative where she is the one who suffered, who was mistreated, who was unloved, when she might exaggerate small conflicts, twist your words, or emphasize moments of weakness to make herself look like the one who endured the most. This is not about truth, it's about rewriting the breakup story so she doesn't feel like the bad guy. She wants to leave with her reputation intact, maybe even with sympathy from others, while you're left as the reason it didn't work. This game is devastating because it not only erases the love you gave, but also damages your image in the process. By the time she's gone, she's already rewritten the script, and you're left standing in the ruins, wondering how the person you once loved turned you into the villain of her story. Another dangerous game she plays is the back burner strategy. Even as she withdraws from you, she keeps just enough of a connection alive to make sure you remain an option. Maybe she sends the occasional sweet text, posts something nostalgic on social media, or randomly brings up a shared memory. These small gestures aren't about genuine affection, they're about keeping you hooked, making sure you don't fully detach while she explores other avenues. It's her way of ensuring she has a fallback if her new options don't work out. This game is dangerous because it traps you in limbo. You're not fully in, not fully out, but always waiting. You begin to interpret these breadcrumbs as signs of hope, when in reality, they're simply tools of control. She may also play the mirror empathy game. When she senses you pulling away, she suddenly mirrors back your emotions, acting as if she deeply understands your pain, your stress, or your frustration. She'll say things like, "I know exactly how you feel," or "I've been struggling too." But this isn't genuine empathy, it's a stalling tactic. By aligning with your emotions, she temporarily diffuses your suspicions about her lack of interest. It keeps you from pressing further, from confronting her detachment head-on. This is dangerous because it provides a false sense of closeness, just long enough for her to buy more time before making her move. Then comes the overcorrective intimacy. After weeks of coldness, she may suddenly initiate intimacy again, but it feels different, mechanical, distant, and lacking the passion it once had. This isn't about reconnecting, it's about distracting. She knows physical closeness will silence your doubts temporarily, convincing you that things aren't as bad as they seem. But once that moment passes, the coldness returns, often stronger than before. This game is dangerous because it blurs the line between genuine affection and manipulation, leaving you confused about where you actually stand. You cling to the rare moments of closeness, even though they no longer represent real connection. Another subtle manipulation is the future wall. When she was invested, she spoke about we will travel here, we will build this, we will do that. But as her interest fades, the language shifts. She starts talking about I, her plans, her goals, her future. At first, it seems harmless, just independence. But the truth is, she's constructing a future that doesn't include you. This is dangerous because it often goes unnoticed until it's too late. By the time you realize she hasn't mentioned you in her vision for months, she's already emotionally living in that new reality, and you're just an accessory in her present, not her future. Perhaps the coldest game of all is the final switch. One day, after weeks or months of subtle games, she flips a switch and acts as though you never mattered. There's no emotion in her goodbye, no sadness in her distance, no hesitation in her departure. To you, it feels like whiplash. You can't reconcile the woman who once swore she loved you with the one who now looks at you like a stranger. But to her, this was the endgame all along. Every breadcrumb, every provocation, every silence was building toward this moment. The danger isn't just her leaving, it's how quickly she erases you, as if the entire relationship was disposable. And that is the cruelest truth of all. The games were never about keeping you. They were about softening her own exit, while leaving you to bleed in the silence she so carefully constructed. The aftermath of these games is what destroys men more than the breakup itself. Because when a woman leaves cleanly, when she speaks her truth directly, you can process it, you can grieve it, and eventually you can heal. But when she plays games, when she drags it out with false signals, mixed emotions, and half-hearted affection, she leaves you trapped in uncertainty. You replay moments in your mind, wondering when the shift really began, trying to pinpoint the exact second she stopped loving you. This confusion is not accidental, it's the residue of her tactics, and the truth is, the relationship didn't end the day she left. It ended long before, in those silent rehearsals, those manipulations, those gradual withdrawals. What hurts the most isn't her leaving, it's realizing she left piece by piece while you were still giving her your all. These games also reveal an uncomfortable truth about human nature. When people lose interest, they rarely admit it outright. Admitting it would mean facing guilt, conflict, and accountability. Instead, they cloak it in behaviors that slowly push you to a breaking point, so you'll either chase harder or end things yourself. That way, they can leave with clean hands. For women, this tendency often plays out in ways that exploit men's natural desire to fix, to protect, and to prove their worth. The more she pulls back, the more you lean in. The more she provokes, the more you defend. And the cycle continues until you're drained of your dignity and energy. Understanding this truth doesn't make it less painful, but it gives you clarity. It allows you to step outside the web of her games and see them for what they are, exit strategies, not reflections of your value. The irony is that these games are never as effective as women think, because while they may shield her from guilt, they also reveal her character. The man she leaves might be broken for a while, confused and betrayed, but in time he begins to see the pattern clearly. He realizes that the one who truly lost was not him, but her. She lost the chance to end with integrity. She lost the respect that comes with honesty. And most of all, she lost the rare kind of man who would have stayed, who would have built, who would have endured. By choosing games over truth, she sabotaged not only the relationship, but also her own ability to ever leave with grace. What seemed like power in the moment becomes weakness in hindsight, because games can never replace the strength of facing reality head-on. For men, the lesson in all of this is simple but hard to accept. Don't chase games, don't decode games, don't participate in games. The moment you sense these patterns, the delays, the comparisons, the indifference, the false vulnerability, you must recognize them as signs, not puzzles to solve. They are not opportunities to prove yourself. They are signals that her investment is gone. And once you see that, the most powerful move you can make is not to argue, not to beg, not to fight, but to withdraw your energy. Because when you stop playing, the game collapses. Her tactics lose power, her provocations lose effect, and the illusion she built falls apart. That is how you win, not by saving her interest, but by refusing to let her games destroy your peace. And so, the dangerous games women play when they're losing interest are not just about relationships, they are about control, ego, and self-preservation. But the men who suffer most are those who don't recognize them for what they are. They keep giving, keep explaining, keep chasing, until they've emptied themselves into a void. Don't let that be you. When you see the signs, when you feel the shift, trust your instincts. A woman truly invested doesn't need to manipulate. She doesn't provoke, compare, or rewrite history. She shows up consistently with love and clarity. Anything less is a performance, a prelude to an exit. And once you know that, you'll never fall for the games again. You'll walk away with dignity, leaving her to face the emptiness she tried so hard to hide with manipulation. And that, in the end, is the most powerful position a man can ever hold, unbroken, unbothered, and untouchable.